Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I'm Joe Rocky here with Father Boniface Hicks. And Father, obviously, there's no surprise that I have myself a little dude who is at the point in life where he's running around now. He's trying to learn words. Well, he's got some words, but obviously not a vocabulary that would be of a school child or anything. It's mostly anything that starts with the word D. He can say it. Da, da. He says it all the time. Basically uses as his starting point of pointing at everything. So I bring this up because obviously life is about relationships and situations where you're trying to make, I don't know if fit in is the right way to say it, but there are things that are socially acceptable in this environment than different environments. You know, for instance, if you are at a sporting event and you just start screaming at the top of your lungs, it's generally, there are times that that's accepted. But if you do the same thing, I don't know, in an opera house, it's like never okay. So I just point those up as two examples to bring this into the situation of basically being at mass. You know, my son does not have the capacity of truly understanding that this time is different than other times because I came here in a car seat, I got way over bundled, and now I'm getting taken out. And there's people I know sitting around me, but they're acting differently. So his key thing is to try to do all of the same stuff that he normally does when he doesn't want to stay still. He starts pulling off people's glasses. He starts poking things. He starts getting loud. If you put him down, he tries to run. All of these things that are distracting, at least to people around me, and if not rude or problemsome at a greater degree. So me going through all this, I have different degrees of tensions and stresses that happen with there that, quite frankly, did not used to happen to me going to mass before bringing my son along, essentially, before having my son. And I bring this up because it's a new wave of emotion. It feels wrong to have these types of feelings and thoughts at a mass. But I also have a strong feeling that I'm not the first person who has gone through this. I'm just the first person in front of a podcast with you going through this. And I wanted to bring it up as a chance to discuss it because, like I said, I'm not the only person who has these worried or maybe even shame feelings going on around it. I can see it in the other new parents that are just in the building with me in our parish with us. So, like I said, I wanted to start that as a conversation point because while it might be something that is in my head, I also feel like it's commonly in many people's heads. So, with that being said, Father, if you can guide me with some answers here or some thoughts to put there next time I'm feeling, stressed out.
Yeah, it's challenging, huh? I'm always greatly appreciative of parents and what they go through. I try to at least withhold my own uh, feelings of judgment or whatever. I sort of work through those kinds of things. Why can't those people get their kids under control? And of course, every parent is already feeling that, and the ones who aren't feeling that, like, you kind of wish they were feeling that because, like, this is not okay, whatever's happening. So
Mm-hmm. It
it's
also leads to like maybe it would just be easier if I don't show up. And we inherently know that that's the wrong answer. So we're trying to figure out like the roadmap of playing through it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
yeah. So it's well, I don't know. I have seen many parents seem to figure this out, but kind of in their own way, and that's um, I admire that in each case. And children have different temperaments, so different children are going through different things. And then I also see, things like the Montessori approach and the catechesis of the Good Shepherd approach. I see 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds like working quietly for 2 hours. And I think, are they drugged? Is there like ether in that room, or what in the world is happening? So I know things are possible, and then it always seems like things should be able to be rearranged in different ways, and to make it possible for children to, I don't know, behave in certain ways, I suppose. But then I also know, not setting up children for failure and expecting them to do things that they can't do, or else that can become somewhat destructive. So normally what I do when I have people bring up this is I send them to somebody else to talk to who know how
Fair
to
enough.
work with children. And I just reverence in awe at a distance everything that parents are doing and whatever is happening. And but I know, um, the foundational things are unconditional love, uh, discovering where your children are able to handle different things in different ways, the not expecting of them what's beyond their capacity, just not setting them up for failure, taking them into environments that they can't handle. And that's not the same for every child. I was just at this wedding that the reception was loud, and this little baby, I mean, whatever he is, 6 months old maybe, happy as a clam. I mean, just like looking around, seeing every new person, totally unafraid of strangers, reaching out. I mean, just completely engaged. Another child would have been screaming his head off,
Mhm.
that and maybe just passed out. A lot of times hyperstimulation leads to unconsciousness, as children just don't have the capacity, depending on the age of the child and things like that. Um, our church environments are not always the most helpful, but again, that's a cultural thing to some extent. In the Byzantine churches, traditionally they like let children run free, and children, like, people are not allowed to enter the sanctuary, but children are allowed to go wherever they want. And the priest just, I mean, the child's running through or whatever, just lets the child go, or redirects them or something like that. It's a total non-issue. And so we've developed cultures that are sort of friendly in that way. Other churches are not that way. Some churches I've been to, you know uh, this one church in Pittsburgh where, like, I think the average age of the 10 a.m. congregation is about 18, because there are so many children under the age of 10, and it's like a low roar the entire mass, and you just kind of drown it out. I mean, there's just constant little noises coming from little people who are there in the congregation, and those people love that. They're like, that's it's a sign of life, as it should be. Another congregation, or we have our monastery, um, evening prayer, morning prayer, something like that. We've got monks, and a family brings in a small child who, like, starts screaming, and it's like, what? Why did you think this is okay? What are you doing? Take the child somewhere. Like, this is not the place for it. And I think some parishes maybe are not as tolerant of extra noises. Now, again, those noises can be arranged. One thing is the child that's talking, or knocks the kneeler down or something like that. Another is when the child is screaming so loudly that you can't hear the priest preaching the homily. I mean,
Mhm.
those are two different examples of children making noise. So anyway, all of these different settings. But I guess the reassuring thing for anybody is that it's not easy for anybody. And uh, learning to socialize your children in these different environments is has its own challenges. Getting to know your children, and they're in different places at different points in their life, or different days of the week, I mean, or different times of the day, and getting to know all of that and be sensitive to that, setting up children for success. And then I think really working on the interior of, you're doing the best you can, and keep trying, keep learning, keep talking to people, keep getting advice, keep trying things. And all of that effort, it matters. And it's already a good in itself. We can't become so end point oriented, so product oriented, that we lose sight of the value of the process, which is all of these. these little ways of engaging and understanding and hearing our children. They don't just like cry out and make noise because they're bad. That's also an important point. They're
Mhm.
experiencing something, and we need to be able to validate their emotions. They're interacting with the world that way, even if we also at the same time need to redirect. Like, you won't die because your stomach is growling. You won't die.
Mhm.
I know it's uncomfortable, and I know that you really want food, but you're not going to die. And anyway, we help to regulate some of these things. So now I've said a bunch of things that probably the parents who are listening are going to come and attack me for not saying it in the best ways, because, like I said, I am no expert at this, and I don't fashion myself as an expert at this. What I've just shared is observations for whatever they're worth.
Well, I appreciate that. That's fair enough. The it's I guess where I'm at is I don't believe that like extra elements should be brought to the church. Like, this is not the time to bring books or toys or coloring books or any of that stuff. And I personally have just never been on the bus of people doing that. Anything that's going to distract from the ultimate goal of one day being a full participant in the mass is by definition counterproductive. And I get that that's starting from exactly what you told me not to do, of results oriented, but at the same time, that's kind of, if I'm building a system, I want to know what the endpoint's going to be and try to get us there. So it's hard for me to turn off results oriented lifestyle. Just
What
that's
I
me thing.
I don't mean that you're not aiming at anything, but as there are many failures along the way, we shouldn't get discouraged by the failures when things don't work one step after the next. That's all I meant. No, certainly we want to aim at forming children to be full, conscious, active participants in the Mass, to be able to enter into these transforming mysteries that are the centerpiece of our life, and our entryway into eternity. So, no, certainly we have a long range, but I just meant not to get discouraged along the way when things are not quite working out. Don't lose sight of the effort and the value of the effort as we're stumbling along.
Fair enough. And that's part of where I think I'm also having problem with, because and this just might be an age thing. He just might be, 3 months from now, this is a moot point. Um, but with him being so active, and me, because I've had shoulder surgery, not being able to really hold him, um, it's becoming, what can I do to help the situation? It used to be I just hold him up high, basically put on my shoulder, and he looked around and became amazed by everyone around him, maybe make googly eyes or not. But it was quiet. People were engaging him in a way that they felt comfortable with by default. And that was that. And since I'm not able to do that right now, and I won't be able to do that for, unfortunately, an extended period of time, um, figuring out my own process through this, because um, on the one hand, I feel like I'm helpless and I can't do anything about it. I feel like there's a certain burden of responsibility, or whatever the term is, that because I physically can't, I'm by default putting it upon other people. And I'm just not dealing well with that. And it's one of these things that I know we've talked in the past about concentration levels. I feel like mine is plummeting, and I'm losing the ability for basic thinking and listening skills. And that's kind of where I'm worried about, and where I'm at here is just kind of putting that all on the table here, Father. So we got about 5 minutes or so left in today's conversation.
Yes. Well, I think it's a marvelous adventure. It's something so beautiful, and I think we also have to we certainly can grow from the wisdom of past generations. And as I say, I do a couple of women who work with me at the Institute for Ministry Formation are just amazing. They're both catechists and catechesis of the Good Shepherd, and have just both spent a tremendous amount of time with children, and have really good insights around how to handle different things. Some of the glory stories with CGS are that the children actually know what's going on in the Mass. And so they want to sit up front, which always terrifies parents, because what if they have a meltdown? And so the
Mhm.
parents tend to pull them towards the back, but then it actually disengages the children with what's happening in the Mass. And so that's counterproductive. As one example, none
Mhm.
of these things should be absolutized, but that's the kind of thing that can happen, that when children understand the gestures and words of the Mass, as I was saying in maybe it was the previous episode about the absorbent mind, which is ages 0 to 6. So, what are you going to fill that absorbent mind with? With the language and the gestures of the Mass and the scriptures, because the language of God is the one that we really want to get in there. And those are the ways by which we receive the language of God. And so when children have begun to absorb the language of God, and then they see that getting worked out in the Mass, and they know what it means when the priest extends his hands with palms down, that's the epiclesis. 3-year-olds will say that to their parents. That's the epiclesis. And their parents go, the what? Because the parents don't know, but the children soak these things in, and they know what it means. It's not just the gesture and the word, but also the fact that the Holy Spirit is being called down on the gifts. That's what it means when the priest extends his hands, palms down during the sacraments. And so the by setting up the children for success, engaging them in what's happening in the through the atrium. The atrium is the place where catechesis of the Good Shepherd takes place. Atrium means like antechamber, so it's not the church; it's the thing next to the church. But it's the place where we practice being in the church, and so we take off our shoes before we go into the atrium, and we use a different voice, and we treat the implements in the atrium with care, and we keep them in order, and we do one thing at a time. And what we work with in the atrium are the words and the gestures of God's revelation in scripture and the mysteries and the Mass, and so we practice for these things, but then children understand church is the real thing. It's what they've been practicing for. And then they're excited to see, so these are again, the glory stories. I don't want to paint a picture that, suddenly all the children no longer are children because they've, spent 2 hours in the atrium. but
Mhm.
but these kinds of patterns do develop, and these sorts of things can take hold, and differently in each child, and they all have their own temperaments to work with. But anyway, my point is that these women I work with are incredible with children and have seen really great things, and they agree with you 100%. By the way, Joe, no Cheerios, no toys, no books, no games. This is not the way to engage them in the Mass, and we don't need to babysit them that way. Better to take them out than to have them in there with all that stuff. So that's some of their
Something
wisdom.
right here. I'll get the conclusion. Yeah, at
What's
least,
that?
at least we know we're doing something right there at the conclusion of the episode. As we're having a little bit of Wi-Fi issues here to conclude it, but we're going to thank everyone for being here with us this week, and we will be with you guys again here next week.